Hi, my name's Sarah. I am 42 years old, and I am about 2 weeks away from being alcohol-free for 1 year. Now that I've set my stall out for you a little bit, I suspect you've probably got a pretty good idea of where we're going with this. That mine's a cautionary tale of rock bottom, that one last chance to turn my life around. When I tell people I don't drink, by and large, they come to one of two conclusions. In that first split second in their mind, most people assume I'm either pregnant or I'm an alcoholic. And the point here is that that's not my story. I'm not pregnant, something my husband will be delighted to hear me say in front of actual witnesses. I've been famous in my family for years and years now for being the one who will be in bed by 9:30 with a cup of tea. If I ever so much as WhatsApp my sister after about 9:45, I promise she'll reply with, "Oh, you're up late." Mine has, for the longest time, been a very average drinking habit. And so why me? Why am I here today talking to you? If I don't have that rock bottom story to tell you, what is it that I want you to take away from this? It's that split-second assumption that I want to try and start to challenge. I'd love us to be part of a process where we almost begin to rewire our brains to not assume there has to be that rock bottom reason. And if we do assume that, to be a little bit more empowered to challenge it. And so, to hopefully help you see a new perspective, I wanted to tell my story. I would say it started in about my late 30s. What I could only describe as a creeping fascination with this idea of sobriety. I kept coming back in my mind time and time again to this question, what if? What might my life be like if I decided to stop drinking? When faced with a question like that, I did what any right-minded person in the 21st century would do. I Googled it. About 4,500 times. And every time, on top of the pile, was always content for people who are clinically addicted and need help to give up. Now, please make no mistake, I entirely endorse that being on top of the pile. That content literally saves people's lives. But on the basis that you can't be what you can't see, I couldn't see myself reflected back anywhere online, not at first. Therefore, I assumed I was the only grown-up having these thoughts. Over the course of my journey, I discovered the book, The Sober Girls Society Handbook. In it, the author Millie uses this analogy, which really stuck with me. She says, if there was a fire in your house, you would call the fire brigade before it got out of hand, wouldn't you? So why do we treat drinking as if you have to wait for your house to burn to the ground before you're allowed to take steps? I didn't want my house to burn to the ground. That was also that first tiny glimmer of starting to feel seen. But make no mistake, this idea, this concept, bounced around inside my head like a pinball for a number of years. There were certain things that I knew to be true. I no longer really had any time for those first thing in the morning white wine headaches. I was questioning what, over the long term, this was doing to my health. But actually, substantially, what I was questioning was whether the reward bit of this risk and reward relationship was gone. I couldn't be sure I really enjoyed the process anymore, let alone the consequences. I jumped right into what I would describe as your entry-level stuff, right? Your sober Octobers and your dry Januaries. I did them all. But none of them ever stuck. And they never stuck because I would get to the end of every month and I would almost tell myself off. I'd be like, well, look at this. You just stopped drinking for a whole month with no problems. You're obviously fine. You don't have a problem. Snap out of it. And I'd go back to my same old habits. I mean, that one's a classic, right? Wine in the airport on way to a holiday. My Instagram probably looked like everybody's Instagrams. But it's in all of that stuff that the irony of alcohol lies for me. Not only have we put this thing on a pedestal, we've baked it into all these little occasions in our lives. And when you consider that the base substance that we're talking about here has been around since before human life was on this planet as we know it, it's no real wonder that we've all lost our perspective on it. We can no longer treat that like something that you can take or leave at will. It's like a basic adult human essential. It's like air or good Wi-Fi. My actual turning point came on what was a really pretty inauspicious day last year. It was the 28th of November, and we'd been away with friends the weekend before. Before we went away for the weekend, I remember thinking to myself, when I get home, I'm going to do a bit more reading about this. I'll probably do a few more Google searches, actually. What struck me when I woke up on the morning of the 28th was how barking mad this whole thing was, for a number of reasons. I had very obviously been waiting for an epiphany. I was waiting for this sparkling clarity of exactly why I wanted to quit drinking and exactly when the perfect moment was going to be to do that. But life doesn't work that way, because there isn't a perfect moment, is there? There's always Christmas or a birthday or wine at the airport on the way to a holiday or a family barbecue or people coming for dinner or whatever it is. It's always coming around. But it was on that morning that I started to question if I really needed a reason. We struggle to make an informed choice about this thing. But for the very first time, I could see that maybe I didn't need permission. Maybe I could stop because I wanted to. The idea of what I was talking about was overwhelming for me as much as it would be for anybody else. So on that morning, I decided to have a weekend off it. And that was a year ago. Because in that moment, it stopped being about never again, and it started being about not today, and then not today, and then not today. And all of those little not todays are so much more manageable. As the months have passed, I've started to see myself a bit more clearly. As a result of confirmation bias, I get served more content online and expose myself to more content online from people who think and feel the way that I do. But the algorithm needs time to catch up, doesn't it? At the beginning, I thought I was the only person having these thoughts. I can now see I absolutely wasn't. My challenge over the course of the past year, as we know, hasn't been in rebuilding my life from the ground up. Rather, it's been in unpicking all those little ways that alcohol and our lives have got wound up together. Let me give you an example. Easter this year was spent in the Channel Islands with family. On one of the days, we're on one of the smaller islands called Herm, sitting in a pub garden, when the conversation between my husband and his brother turns to their family holidays on that island when they were little boys. Such a small island that the kids had the run of the place, spending their pocket money in the tat shop while their parents sipped rosé in the evening sunshine. I was in the same pub garden in the evening sunshine. My son running wild around the island with his cousins, spending his pocket money in the tat shop. And I thought to myself, if ever there was a perfect moment, it's now. So I ordered it. I ordered a rosé, and it came. And I took one sip of it, and it tasted weird. But actually, as soon as I took that sip, I realized it wasn't that was making my situation perfect. My situation was pretty perfect as it was. I will always remember that moment because I use it when my brain tells me just to have a drink, that it will probably just taste weird. Earlier this year, my mum was ill, and it would be no secret to say that there were some pretty dark days. But throughout that whole time, I didn't once have a drink because I knew that wasn't the coping mechanism I needed. That wasn't going to make things better or easier. In fact, it was probably going to make things worse. Lying awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, wondering if your mum's going to make it through the night is no easier when your head's spinning. I knew that what I had to do was learn how to sit with those feelings at 3 in the morning, work out what they were trying to tell me about me and about how I could help her. I am so pleased that my mum's back recovering at home, and whilst she would have loved to have been in the auditorium with us today, she has been with me on this journey through every step. And I love you, Mum. When I applied to stand on this famous red dot today, please make no mistake, it was never with the intention of making everyone stop drinking. Quite the opposite. Each one of us has our own very personal, unique, sometimes kind of murky relationship with this thing. I do wonder, however, if hearing me talk today has prompted a reaction in you, and if that reaction is maybe speaking to your own relationship with alcohol. What I wanted to do was to paint a picture, to use my story to help some other people feel seen, so that you know if you too are questioning this thing we're told you've got to do because you're a grown-up, it's okay. You don't need permission. In fact, whatever that thing is that you're questioning, I wonder where your not today might take you. So, if you meet me at a party, yes, I am up late. No, I'm not drinking. And no, I don't need a reason. Thank you.